Hello, my name is Angel Salaveras, and I would like to welcome you to the show, Making the Connection in Lancaster. It's going to be a program that deals with many important issues for you, your children, and your community. The show will focus on educating you about life skills training. For those of you who don't know what life skills training is the value of good health, decision making, risk taking, and substance abuse, to name a few. During the next several weeks, we will be broadcasting a 30-minute program full of information that you will find very helpful in your home. You and your youth in the day-to-day lives. We have expert guests this morning that I would like to introduce to you. First, we have Radames Melendez, Director of Outreach for Team Health, and the CEO from Team Care, Jennifer Hines, with us this morning. We have invited these expert guests to help us bring this message to your house or to your home. We are pleased that they have accepted our invitation. Today we would like to talk to them a little bit about behavioral issues that our kids are experiencing at home and in the schools. Our student population is one that suffers from many issues. A lot of the time they are not to be blamed for their behavioral issues. They suffer from fetal alcohol spectrum disorder because the mother might have drank while she was pregnant or carrying the child. And they also suffer from ADHD, one of the old problems that continues to affect our youth today. What are some of the symptoms, Radames, would you say, with ADHD?
First of all, good afternoon, Angel, and
Welcome.
thank you for welcoming us to your show this afternoon. Some of the symptoms I would say with kids is that they have a hard time staying focused. They sort of, in a home setting, sometimes it's very difficult for parents to catch it unless parents are at a setting where they're having dinner or in church settings. But it's a lot of times that's it being in the school settings is where teachers notice it because the child just can't stay still. He has to move around all the time, and that's very important for people to kind of understand that it's not that the child is displaying a negative behavior. He just doesn't have control of his actions and his emotions. Would you say? Would you?
Do you
Yes.
agree with that, Jen?
Yes, they tend to have difficulty. They're the ones that teachers might say they have ants in their pants.
Yes.
Can't sit still, constantly moving, can't keep their hands to themselves, and they might even talk a lot. They might not be able to kind of button their lips once in a while.
And who do you think would notice that first? Would that become evident at home before school, like preschoolers?
It could, yes, it could. We see a lot of the kids we might have preschool teachers, Head Start teachers, might contact us and say, this child is acting a little different than all the other kids in the room, can't sit for circle time, might be running around the classroom, can't keep their, like I said, can't keep their hands to themselves, and it's affecting when they get a little bit older, it affects their learning then.
Yes, it does. Okay, because they're not paying attention, they're not focused, they're constantly on the move.
And I think it's very important too, just to note that kids that have ADHD, the statistics show that they have very high intelligence. These are not dumb kids. They're not any less smarter than any other children. They usually have the higher IQs, but
the truth is that they are misdiagnosed or they get that attention that
Correct.
they're unruly.
Correct.
And so they get pushed to the side
Correct.
in many cases.
and that they're bad and that they're doing it on purpose. And no child wants to be in trouble.
Right.
And I think their actions, then they don't have to control their actions. Professionals and some look at it in a school setting might say, well, he's being disrespectful, he's unruly, and then they want to deal with the child with disciplinary.
Right.
But at times we have to find first, before we get to that stage of dealing with the discipline, we have to find out what are the causes to the problem. We have to scope the whole problem. What's going on in the room? what's causing the problem, and then find a solution. That's where it comes. Instead of going to the solution right away and saying, well, listen, you're acting up, you can't stay still. Then you send him, he's suspended from school.
Right.
Calling the parents, and without really finding out what is the,
What the cause.
everything starts by us as expert sort of. First of all, I would always say, you look at the environment, look how what's causing it. What's going on through these kids. Sometimes deal if they come from parents that are separated. They also have to deal with those issues. That doesn't help a child with those
Right.
symptoms. So, and then you find out all the causes, and then you come up with the solution. But I think we're getting better as we move
Professionals
forward.
are dealing
Professionals
with
are getting better at it. At one time, but it was really this is what's happening.
Well, that brings me to my next question. The parents, what is the initial stages of identifying this problem? What are the steps that the parents need to take?
I think for parents, it's hard, from personally speaking, I think these are the kind of kids that kind of make the parents crazy. So as a parent, you're saying, sit down,
Right.
be quiet. And you're constantly on the child. You
On the
might be
child,
repeating your
yes.
child's name, Johnny, 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 Johnny,
Right.
Johnny, to the point where as the parent, you're very upset because you feel like they're purposely not listening. So I think for the parent, for us, the way that we treat the kids that come to our clinic is there's obviously all types of observation.
Right.
There's rating scales that parents can fill out. Even pediatricians give
Okay. But
rating scales.
they are referred to you then, but prior to them being referred to you, the parent has to, I guess, identify that the child has some kind of an issue.
Correct.
Okay, so do they go through the school system, through the counselors in school,
They
or do they go through their family doctors?
They can do either. Pediatricians can test them, so to speak, for ADHD.
There is a test that they do.
It's a
initial test.
scale.
Right.
Usually they give that scale to the teachers. If the child has multiple teachers, they'd have all the teachers, and it's a very simple scale. They'd have all the teachers complete it, and then the pediatrician would then kind of take those results and see where they are, and then pediatricians usually refer then to more of a specialist, which is where then we would our type of agency like ours would come into play.
And Brad, what is the treatment that they offer now for a child with ADHD?
I mean, there's all sorts of treatment. I mean, we look at medication, behavior modification, treatment plans. Those are really big when we work with those kids.
Okay, counseling is not one of the
well,
options,
that's
though?
the part. Counseling works, but it has to work with the treatment plan.
Right.
There's a behavior plan in place,
Okay.
so that we sort of set the boundaries for the child to see how much can he stay within those boundaries. So that's important. And one thing I do want to point out is too that a lot of times these kids are product of their environment. The parents might also
Yeah,
have those
absolutely,
symptoms,
yes.
and most of the time, for parents that are dealing with the same symptoms, it's hard for them to catch those symptoms.
'Cause they think it's-
and it's all
They
about
think it's
behavior.
normal.
It's
Right.
normal.
Right.
So the kids are part of that environment, and if I found is that it's a generation piece. It goes from one parent to another parent to another parent. Their kids. It's like the whole generation
Right.
spectrum.
I think we find the most success with our ADHD kids is a combination, like Radimus was saying. These are not kids that you want to sit down and have a typical outpatient therapy session with,
Right.
because
Just a
it might be
moment.
difficult for
Right.
them. I mean, some of our therapists they even do different activities with the kids. We actually have a playground at our office, so they might actually take the kids out and let them swing. And as they're swinging, they're talking and doing therapy, and so
Right.
for a child to sit down and talk like we're talking would be difficult.
Yes.
But we have probably the most success with the therapists would help come up with some strategies for the for the children in the classroom, and in addition with the medication, because the ADHD is it's a issue within the brain.
Right.
So sometimes you have to retrain. You have to retrain it.
One of
Retrain
the
the
things,
brain.
and one of the things I found is in our outreach program in the schools, we come across kids with the symptoms, and we're doing a lot of non-traditional group settings because of that. These kids come in and they can't stay still from the very minute they walk into class. And imagine having 10, 12, 15 kids like that. But our therapists have been trained to really kind of oversee that because we know coming in what the child's symptoms are. And so we have a lot of non-traditional. Music moves them down, play some music while they're in groups. We do that, art, card games. We're still getting the therapy in place, but we're keeping them active.
Right.
Activity is a good.
Activity.
Yeah, that's important because I've noticed that in some of the groups that I do with the kids. There's always one or two that that they're out there, and a lot of times they get identified to me. This child is like this and whatnot. So I'm able, once I know that ahead of time, I'm able to make the adjustment and kind of give them a little leadway and not kind of force them to sit in that chair or do the work that we're trying the rest of the group to do.
And a lot of them struggle. Typically, they struggle with writing.
Right.
They usually excel at math, but writing and reading is very, very difficult.
And one other piece is to get them involved in sports. I mean, get them out there and work that energy out of them.
Yeah, these children need to be active.
They have to stay
Yeah.
active, and
Right.
and I find that the kids that are not involved in sports that have these symptoms, then when they go to school, they got their full energy. What I have, I have a young man right now that was displaying all these behaviors and was able to get him into football, and it sort of calms him down. It's part of that whole, because we could think about medication. Medication is only a tiny piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of things that have to be involved, and mostly parents have to get involved. You just can't medicate them and let them think that it's going to work miracles. You got to get involved, and parents have to be part of that whole behavior modification plan. Parents have to be involved in the activities.
Have you come across some of the kids that don't want to take their medication because it changes the way that they act, and it kind of takes their energy away? Have you heard that?
These kids never lose their energy.
Yeah.
It's more our physicians that are in our office that do prescribe medications when they're educating the families about it. The nice thing about these type of medications is right away. It's a quick result.
Right.
You don't have to wait 3 weeks.
Right.
And right away if it's working or not.
Okay.
There are some negative side effects. Sometimes their appetite might go down.
Right.
Sometimes they might be a little more emotional. But when you find the right medicine, it's to quote our one doctor, it's like a light switch goes off.
Yeah, because I have one parent to one of the kids in my group, and she gives him the medication, and he acts like he'll drink it, but he won't. He throws it out, and she knows, she can't force it down his throat and whatnot. He just absolutely will not take the medication because he says it just changes the way he is, and it slows him down. He can't jump and run and jump the way he does, when
He
he's
either
not
needs
on
to have his medication adjusted. And now mom has probably found herself in a power struggle with him
Right,
because
she has.
she's fighting with him to take medicine, and
Right.
and it comes in all different forms now. It comes in liquid form, it comes in a patch form that they actually wear a patch. So there's all different. We've heard probably at our clinic, we've heard every possible excuse as to why.
Right.
And we just try to work with them, and some of our families, until they might have to try 4 or 5 different medicines until they find the right one.
How old is the child?
12.
12. One of the things that I find that works is educating the child. A lot of times we give medication to the child because he's a child.
But you don't tell them what it's
We
for.
don't tell them what it's for.
Right.
We don't share with them the symptoms. But I found that in the years I've worked with kids that with medication and they don't want to take it, I would sit down with them and educate it. Even us as adults, we want to know what we're putting into it, and you show them the negatives and the positive of taking the medication. So educating the child is very important when you give medication to a child, and let them know, hey, listen, this is what's going to help you. Because remember the other day when you were bouncing all over the walls and I got the call from the teacher? This is going to help you. Just like if I'm not diabetic and I don't take my medication,
Correct.
I'm going to have problems all day.
Right.
So education, I always believe and this is just my personal opinion, that medication education first starts with your kid, the parents, and the doctors involved. Everybody's, I think that's very important.
And I think it's important too for the kids to be able, no matter how old they are, they need to know what the name of it is, how much they take,
Right.
what any kind of pill,
Yeah.
for safety reasons.
Yeah, I think
you know?
finding the right level is very important. And with some of the kids that are having these negative feedback from the medication you're taking, I think that's part of the problem.
And I
there.
think a lot of families too, I think people, Ritalin, is
That's the most common one that they use.
It's the oldest, it's popular.
Right.
I think there's 5 or 6 of them now.
Right.
But I think a lot of families feel that if they put their children very young, if they put a 5, 6-year-old on this medication, there used to be a rumor that went around that they're going to do drugs. They're
Right.
going to be addicted to it. And there's studies that show that these true ADHD kids are the ones, if they don't get treatment for it, they will be the first ones to try.
Right. Well, that leads me to my next question, because what is the risk for kids not getting treated early? Because I know what I've seen so far, but I want to hear what you guys.
And I wanted to go back a little bit on the last. I think
Okay.
make the whole cultural when it comes to medication. And when we're talking about Latino Hispanics, and most of the time they view that when a child doesn't want to take it, they view it as something that, like we just said, it was a drug or some really mental health issues, really something really serious is going on with my son or daughter, and he's not. We're a healthy family.
Yeah.
But we've come a long way from the whole, what we believe 30, 40 years ago, when having a mental health issue was really, it had this omen on it.
Like stigma.
That's a real stigma, like sort of, but now we have to teach kids. And I think sometimes when, I found with that age that you mentioned, like the 12, 14, 15-year-olds, 16, 17-year-olds, when you talk about medication, they're always saying, well, there's nothing wrong with me, And the word that they always use is really, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. It has nothing to do with crazy.
Right.
And I always tell the kids, it has nothing to do with you being crazy. But, your behaviors will be really, not good.
Because think about it, if you're a teenager and you're in a peer setting where alcohol is offered or drugs are offered, and you already have that intent, you're impulsive, and you might say, all right, I'll try that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll try that,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's why I say the kids that are not getting treated early, and the parents are just letting them go because maybe the parents are the same way, and they think it's normal behavior. Okay, so they go on years and years and not treated. They go through the school system with failing grades, acting out, getting suspended from school. By the time they're teenagers, sometimes even before, they start self-diagnosing themselves and self-medicating on other things.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's what we've seen.
Right.
I had worked with the family. It's interesting we were talking about this. I just did a small write-up on this, and I have worked with the family. I brought them into my office, and I was telling them about the kids' behaviors, and we're having casual conversation just like this, trying to get from point A, point B, and the kid just blared out and said, "Mom, but you act the same way." and I could see the resistance from Mom. She's like, she called us, took her back. She didn't believe it. No. Then Mom got her. Then she really went off on the child. And I had to just kind of say, you know what? This is years ago when this happened. We need to have a conversation.
You should come see me.
Yeah, we got to talk.
Well, I think too, don't you think that the kids who are acting out in school, even if it is ADHD, their behaviors, it keeps kind of escalating, and then they turn into more of a conduct disorder kind of kid, and those are, it's sad because they're really not, that none of them are bad kids, and it almost, if they ignore it, it usually gets worse.
Yeah, it's going to spiral out of control.
Right.
If you look at the kids coming through the juvenile justice system, and you look at the diagnosis, that's what the symptoms that they're coming across.
Right.
Impulsive.
And very impulsive. Really don't think just to take a risk. Not thinking. And what happens is the older you get, because now you're getting stronger. When you were a kid, you sort of ran around, but now you're developed physically.
Right.
that now that whole aggression now it becomes you become aggressive.
Aggressive. And labeled as a bully.
Right.
Label.
Yes.
Now you become aggressive, and when you're aggressive, what's going to happen? Now the law is going to come in and deal with you, differently.
you did.
Yeah.
And
Right.
deal with you just broke the law. You broke the law.
Right.
And so it's very important for parents to really say, hey, you know what? At a younger age, this is going to be okay because it's going to keep you safe. It's going to keep you safe because it's sad to say, but if you look at the kids that are in detention or in residential, and you look at the parents that have gone through the prison system,
Right.
so they have the same.
Yeah.
There's no difference.
There's
Under-
very many or a lot of similarities there, and you see that when you see the parents and the child together, by the parent trying to deal with the child, how they deal with them. Sometimes you see that what the kids are saying is true. You're just like me. So there's where making the connection. We try to look at things from preschool, all the way up into the high school. And if you have the opportunity to follow a child through those steps, you see a lot of these connections. And you see the kids that have had problems and have been dealt with through professional care, and then the ones that have ignored it and think that, my child's going to outgrow it, he'll get better, and he doesn't. What happens is they end up, like I said, self-diagnosing and self-medicating, and it continues on and on.
I think it's important too, the schools do play an important piece. If a child is diagnosed with ADHD, that opens up kind of a new window for the schooling.
Yes.
They would qualify for an IEP and special accommodations, and to help them, they might need to sit closer in the class, they might need to take a lap
Yeah.
around the building, so it has to be everybody.
It has to be a
the
coordinated
school-
effort.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
So as far as the older children that have not been treated, okay, and they're out of control, is there any way to kind of try to go back to treat that after they're in their teens
Sure.
still?
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay.
We would treat them all, the treatment is all pretty much the same.
It's still the same?
Pretty
whether
much.
they're youngsters?
Pretty much. Now, if they have done something, if they have more negative behaviors that have more consequences, then we have to deal
Yeah,
with those
right.
consequences.
Right.
But the treatment's typically the same.
Treatment's the same. It's just he's gotten older, bigger, stronger.
Okay.
But the thing with the older child is getting them to understand it. Education plays a big role.
Yeah.
Because by the time you're older, you kind of make your own decision. I worked with older kids that at one point they were taking the medication. They said, you know what, I don't need this anymore. So you have to be very direct and put it.
And I
almost-
think sometimes the older kids too, they want to have control of everything, and taking the medication is the one thing they have control of. That's kind of their last thing. If
Yeah.
I don't take it, I don't
Right.
want to take. Why am I
Right.
going to take this?
And that's where we see a lot of those issues.
It's like
as
then it
as the
becomes
kids
a
get older,
power struggle.
they have that control.
Right.
And-
Mom wants you to take it. No,
Right.
I don't want.
Absolutely.
And you know what happens too is a lot of times these kids, if they come from a dysfunctional family, for example, where the child now he's older, he goes on their own. We know these kids are out there. I call them the invisible kids. They tend to, because they don't have maybe Medicare, they don't have insurance, they don't have anything.
So they stop.
Then they stop, and that goes through the waistline, and then they might resort to drugs and alcohol as a way to feel good. Because if you talk, you've worked with young men that have been involved with drug and alcohol. So here I have, and you talk to a young man who he'll say, "Well, I smoke marijuana so I could calm down."
Right.
It gives me,
Yeah, we hear that.
and he knows. Or I drank some alcohol because it kind of mellows me. But when you really look at it and you say, well, what kind? Well, what insurance? They don't have nothing. So these kids get lost.
Yeah.
They get lost, and
Yeah, and that's where they go out and they, like I said, they start, trying to find their own way of trying to adjust themselves through alcohol, drugs or what have you.
Yeah, because I mean, we all know that drugs at times, all the time, it's medication. They medicate themselves.
Right.
Self-medicate.
Yeah, self-medicate.
Interesting topic. We could talk about this forever.
Yes.
You know, the truth of the matter is that it's something that it's here. We need to deal with it. And if we don't deal with it in a proper way, then we're just asking for trouble down the road.
And I think it's important for us, for all providers and people working, professionals, educators, to sort of work together on this problem. You
Yes.
know, the days of, I'm working with this person. Share information and share,
Absolutely.
work together. This is what's going to make our community a better place to live. And more, if our interest is the kids, then we work together as a community, to make sure that we help that child.
And I think
those families.
the education part too is not just for the kids. The parents need to be informed and empowered to deal with these issues.
And I would go even a little further. I would say professionals. We have to work outside the box.
Oh yeah,
And
school teachers especially. They have no tolerance for misbehavior, but sometimes, they don't have the time to deal with these special issues, and it's much easier for them to say, go to the principal's office than to take time out with that child and say, you know what, we need to deal with this, and call the parent in. And
Because if we don't work outside the box, we're going to go back 40 years ago when everything was just, this is the way things are done. But this is, 2011 coming in around the corner already. We have to, things are a lot different. So we have to work outside our box on a more non-traditional way as therapists and professionals to help that child. Because we know that all childs are not, their development and their brain, how they develop, their environment, it's not the same for all kids. And so we have to look at each child, one child at a time.
Right.
And that's how we should work.
There's no one fix for all of them, that's for sure. No question about it. Well, I would like to thank you guys for being on the show today. Appreciate the insight, and we'd like to continue this conversation. But unfortunately, time does not allow us to continue. So we hope that you guys will think about coming back.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you very
on.
much.
It's been a pleasure, and hope we provided you with some good, the audience, with some
Absolutely.
good information.
Absolutely. I'm sure our audience appreciated all the information they gave us today. I'd like to thank you for tuning in today, and that's it for Making a Connection in Lancaster. Please keep us in tune, and we'll see you soon.